from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations, from the place that you all know as Vancouver, Canada. Thank you all for your interest, time, and friendship. I'm honored to address you from the traditional homelands of the Piscataway and the Sgsmålensk peoples, where I've had the honor of being resident artist for the past 4 weeks at the Baltimore Jewelry Center. Some of what I'm covering today engages with Indigenous ecological knowledge and with the dispossession of Indigenous peoples from their land and land management practices in the Pacific Northwest. I am not Indigenous. I live and work on Coast Salish territories, and I continue to engage seriously with what that means, including how botany as a Western discipline is actively as well as historically colonial in its history of discovery, classification, and naming, and often erasing Indigenous knowledge that had understood these relationships, these ecological relationships, since time out of memory. I ask you to keep that in mind for the pertinent parts of this presentation. So for the past 4 weeks and longer, I've really been sitting with pieces of an answer to a question that I've been asking variations of all my life. And one moment I'm realizing I did not share my presentation. Give me a hot second, everybody. Nobody panic. It was just the title screen that whole time. Here we go. You get to see this picture. So are we beautiful? So the question that I've been asking, what can the flora of places, what does belonging look like when what we knew as home is severed? And what can the flora of places offer in terms of wisdom when it comes to that? And in the natural progression of that question, through the lens of the contemporary jewelry field, what does it look like to engage in this custom in all its germane states, like grief, memory, growth, and loss, using the body and material practice as intermediary? So these questions, along with their subsequent technical, functional, narrative, and meanderings, they have been the unflagging obsession of the last 4 weeks at the Baltimore Jewelry Center. As Shane's very generous introduction has introduced me ably, the only thing I'll add is that my study and professional practice have really circled belonging in some way all my life, and that I love to delve into systems, relationships, and story. So before I take you through the work and research produced through the BJC, I want to share the materials that are the foundation of this work. The first is charcoal, which is the oldest mark-making material that humanity knows. As someone who dipped their toe into and later fled the field of archaeology, I'm aware of carbon as a timekeeper of the material record for things beyond memory. It also evokes controlled burning, land management, and charcoal marks are impermanent, easily disturbed, and a material of remembrance rather than archives. You want this to go away?
Yeah, so that the people here.
Oh, okay. I don't know. No.
Mary, do you have a tip?
Oh, hey. I'm just gonna
there we go.
That. I'm just gonna hide you. Should I just stay stream this? It's just like, no. Here. Oh, no. Hide thumbnail view. There we go. Sorry, guys. I'm used to presenting on an Apple, I'll be honest. So the second material is, oh my God, I just tried to tap the computer. There we go. The second material is copper. And in this body of work, copper holds the marks of imperfect remembrance to receive pigment or be feedstock for new reliquaries of grief and confusion. And it's one of the oldest metals to be worked by humanity. So props to that, copper. Lastly, glass and enamel brings the element of support, preservation, and transformation, as well as being incredibly fragile, just like memory, just like belonging. Enamels have been used since the 13th or 14th century to add color and vibrancy. And it also evokes, it connotes optics, lenses, and perception. And these three materials hold in three relationships to permanence and change, also hold and introduce new processes and techniques and new skill trees to unlock. So first, oh my goodness. Okay, the first place is Tsleil-Waututh. It's a tiny settlement of fewer than 40 houses in northern Tuscany in the province of Massa and Carrara, Italy. And I came here to reset my studio practice and spent a lot of time drawing with charcoal and mark making and making marks in a very essential way. Although I do not know the age of the olive grove, the settlement I stayed in has been around since the 14th century, and the surrounding groves of chestnut and oak are ancient. And when I was walking around the olive grove, basically the first day, I noticed kinking and warping in the leaves of a lot of them. And later, Martin, my host, told me that it's not looking like a good year for harvest because the winters are warming and they've failed to kill the olive gallfly. And it could be that unchecked climate change will erase the lines that have been formed for centuries, the lives that have been formed for centuries, and while cultivating abundance in this ancient settlement. And although the most immediate response is one of ecological grief, in the months since then, I've been thinking a lot about interaction. And the philosopher-physicist Karen Barad coined this term to describe the idea that entities don't exist prior to their relationships, and they're constituted through them. The gal is interaction made physical. Its belonging is reorganization, and the form that grew around what entered without permission. And like pearls, gals are an organism's response to intrusion. In this additional area, it's also a response to trauma. And this metaphor could be extended to printmaking, but I'll move on to Vancouver. So when I returned to Vancouver, it really began to occur to me that although Pamukkale was the germ of new ideas, this body of work had begun sometime prior. This is Secret Camas, an engagement ring, or the engagement ring, not an engagement ring, I made for my best friend Simone, herself a brilliant multimedia artist working in site-specific materials like wild clay and earth pigments. And she, I think, does incredible work crafting artifacts of ecological grief. When I was asked to make her ring, her husband and I simultaneously thought of the native species that they were planting in their rewilded garden, and it's emblematic of the new home they're building together. And camas, secret camas is a ring with a compartment just large enough to fit a camas seed. And I later made their wedding rings with Gary oak leaves carved into the bands. And for those of you who don't know, the camas and Gary oak are co-inhabitants of the same rare ecosystem, and they are being mutually disrupted or have been mutually disrupted. Because when European settlers arrived, they described camas growing in vast Gary oak meadows as resembling enormous lakes. And what they saw was really centuries of indigenous land management and cultivated abundance, because they are a very significant food source for numerous peoples. So camas meadows were maintained through controlled burning, careful harvesting, and deliberate replanting, and a reciprocal relationship between human stewards sustained since time immemorial. Robin Wall Kimmerer, in her fantastic book, Braiding Sweetgrass, describes this as reciprocity and extends this metaphor into many relationships and lessons that we ourselves can learn from the natural world. Both species have declined dramatically because of the relationship maintaining them being severed, and dispossession of indigenous land stewards was simultaneously a cultural rupture as well as an ecological one. So in Vancouver, I rediscovered camas as a subject, and having introduced printmaking as a process, I wanted to achieve some kind of marriage with my own practice. And the most obvious overlap with metalsmithing is intaglio, the technique of incising a plate, inking the recessed image, and then printing it with paper. And once I learned this technique, I incorporated charcoal gathered from Pamukkale to print the images. These ones are done with vines, and when I return home, I would like to gather some Gary oak to make charcoal to print camas images in the future. So this continues or creates a cycle of observation, meditation, drawing, printing, and then eventually the creation of an image in metal that represents something about belonging. But it has yet to be tied back to the body. And that brings me to Baltimore. This chapter is the first time in years I've had the time and resources to think about the question that I opened with. 3 places, and as of day 3 in Baltimore, I found my third subject in the wild. I'd done some research ahead of time and knew there were a few candidate species. Ailanthus altissima was introduced from China and has become endemic to the disturbed urban ground of the northeastern United States. It grows in coastal concrete. It grows everywhere. It is known as the tree of hell rather than tree of heaven because it drops seeds, and it is, and it also hosts an equally invasive species. The spotted lanternfly arrived from Asia more recently and has spread rapidly through the region. It feeds heavily on the tree of heaven and is also considered a significant ecological and agricultural threat. What we have here is an invasive species feeding on another invasive species.
Wow.
2 organisms displaced from their original ecologies, encountering each other in a third place where neither belongs in any conventional sense, and producing a relationship there anyway. By processing ailanthus into charcoal, thank you so much, Andrea, for lending me your bonfire. I begin a new branch, a new cycle of this body of work. There's something to contemplate responsibly about a kind of belonging created by displacement rather than care. And it's one that's very well documented by anthropological and sociological discourse. And it's also likely experienced by many of us in this very room and on the internet here. And there really is a responsibility to consider this train of thought with care and caution. So I came to the Baltimore Jewelry Center with 3 copper plates, 2 camas and 1 olive, and an arrangement to learn enamel painting from Elise Bendio in Philadelphia. And the question or the topic of belonging is rattling in my head. What pieces do I want to cut? What am I going to do with these plates? What do I do with the pieces once I've cut them out? The large one is way too awkward to be a necklace. It's like the pieces are the size of my fist almost. So I eventually mocked it up as a belt. And you can see kind of my first attempt at arts and crafts since grade school and the paper chain arts and crafts since grade school at the bottom there. And then lastly, which techniques are capable of enhancing or preserving those marks in copper? So copper is like, charcoal is very fugitive. And it turns out that I thought that you could place charcoal or ink the plate and that it would burn off and some of the marks would remain like graphite does in enamel. This was not true. Charcoal is too volatile. So my delusions of being able to enamel a pretty crystal clear, transparent color over copper was similarly and laughably naive, as the enamelists here gently told me. Thank you, Andy. Copper fundamentally shifts the color of enamels because when you put, a transparent color over an orange background, whatever, it's going to be like mixing, and it's not going to turn out that beautiful periwinkle gray that I was looking at online or whatever it is. It's not happening. So the first week was really trying not to panic and think about how I was going to sustain or maintain these marks, and thinking through the process of just testing, attempting to, rationalize or move forward. This picture is actually maybe jumping ahead of myself a little bit because there were a lot of challenges that enameling in copper would create, and I had no answer. I won't get into all of them right now. But somebody else's mistake in the studio came as an unanticipated blessing for me. So another artist had undersifted the transparent coat, and the instructor, Andy Morin, had suggested that she add another layer of clear, transparent enamel, flux, and to fire it for even longer, just to kind of smooth everything out. And the result was this really ethereal, silvery sage blue color with rich oxides where the flux had receded from the copper. And the thing is, this is due to a reaction between the glass taking on the oxides during an extended firing process. Those of you who know in the room who know the chemistry better than I do, you can correct me during the Q&A. But further tests prove that even scribed marks can show through this layer. I have a few samples where I simply took a steel stylus and drew on it and then fired it, and you could see it quite clearly, as clearly as if you were looking directly at the metal. So I had my process, but it took quite a while to get it right because I spent the next 2 weeks just trying to recreate that color. And there are, to reliably recreate that color. I am also realizing that this is a slightly older version of my presentation. So because I was being naughty and updating it right up until the meeting.
Well, none of your guests would have known.
Well, I am telling you now because I am going to still talk a little bit about some of the processes. So here you can see how thinly you have to sift the enamel so that the image is still seen. But looping back to that is the image on the far right where you can where there's all that burn, the burn marks. And if you sift it too lightly, then the image will burn or char, as you can see at the piece on the bottom. And if you sift it too heavily, you get those copper-looking pieces on the top, which is where the enamel did its job and blocked the flow of air. So what I was trying to achieve was a balance of those pieces in the middle. And you can see that each time I put something together, I just fired it repeatedly, and I did kind of what I call a calibration sift, because being such a novice at enameling, I needed to try 3 or 4 samples until I thought I got the balance right and the kiln at the right heat before I ended up proceeding. So here are some of the images that you can see. I actually quite like the finished oxides. I think they're really evocative of fire, that charcoal callback. And then you can see that here is a macro shot of what it really looks like. It's just those tiny speckles of the areas where the space between the grains are actually not fully sealed away from the air. So you can see a little bit of mottling when it's up close. And firing for an even longer amount of time created a more bluish abalone-like sheen instead of something that's more of that silvery gray. So then came the question of what techniques to do on the reverse of each item. I've been spending so much time just trying to work out what to do with those specific images. And you can see a couple of samples. The slightly blotchy out of focus one dead center is just enamel painting, a technique that is the first few layers of a grisaille enamel painting technique. And then the one to its right and slightly above is my first attempt at cloisonné, which is a technique of picking out a design in silver and then filling the cells with color. And in this case, I just opted to keep it very sleek and black because I wanted to keep returning to fire to charcoal. So the galled olive and the failing harvest represented to me grief for the changing world, worn at the center of the body. And when complete, the mirror images of these olives are going to be picked out in that black and silver cloisonné through the cloisonné techniques and set in silver with the overfired images turning inwards towards the body. So they will not be noticeable or seen by the exterior world, but they will be carried. The camas tells us that we find belonging when it is reciprocal and mutual support is abundant. These pieces will be set separately and the reverse sides are going to be painted in that grisaille technique, evoking ghosts of connection. And this dish, which is scaled to the hand, is destined to have a stand made with a Gary oak motif of some kind or additional camas motifs. I'm really thinking about combining an earlier train of thought with gesso and silver point and seeing if I can combine gesso with charcoal and kind of mix it in to create an interesting drawing surface. But really this one is, all I know is that this dish is kind of like lie on its own, but I want it to have a supportive stand and a setting that it deserves. And lastly, belonging can be unexpected and serendipitous. Let me just check, nope. I'd like to fabricate a silver brooch of the ailanthus leaves to hold that lanternfly enamel that I've done a little sample of, which I will show you later when we are walking through the gallery. And there are 3 places, 3 processes, and 3 botanical subjects. And I invite you to also consider these questions about belonging in your own lives, because wisdom sits in places in the world around us. And in an age when we split our attention to perform obligations in the digital space, we risk really unmooring ourselves from the embodied and place-based wisdom around us. So what I'm saying is, please get out and touch grass and learn things. Jewelry really insists on the body as the site where meaning is carried. And I think that's true of belonging because it can be abstract, cultural, political, or ecological. And also it can be physical and worn. It's really been wonderful being in Baltimore. I look forward to translating the lessons so far into the next step in the cycle, the body, when I'm back in Vancouver. Thank you all for your attention.
All right. Right, everyone. I'm just going to trust that Shane will point the camera where I point. This is my gallery install, and I did write a little I did have a few things to say about it. So I put together this display my first week in Baltimore because a big part about what I wanted to do here was to see if there was something worth saying in what I felt compelled to create. And I think contemplating belonging in, out loud and for others to see while you're trying to, settle in is in of itself a kind of practice to belonging. Or so I tell myself. So this display is likely going to change a little bit over the next 24 hours. But what I've been doing is I've arranged it as a, what's this? It's in this happening format where it started out just with a few photographs and the prints. And then now it's turned, and then as I created work, it just, I ended up adding more items to it. Every so often, there'd be things would disappear while I worked on them. I'd add new sketchbooks and drawings, but it begins with a, what's this? What's the format? And then here are the prints, original prints of the made with the copper plates. And then I kind of was testing out this concept, the botany of belonging, and made an artist, a little draft artist statement, which I feel comfortable now in replacing because I now think it's a bit out of date. There are a number of, well, these are in closer detail. The olive plates, they're slightly domed, and the reverse is still that raw copper because I'm going to put the cloisonné over it, so it's not yet done.
The cloisonné, is it going to be the black?
It is. So this is the design that is going to be, well, not this exact design, but this technique is what I'm going to be using, and I'll pass that sample around. I'll say I didn't set myself up for success with that because I used a white background. So it was really fun and challenging to add black enamel to it and then, stone away at it and then have like little white specks showing through. That was fun. It was really, really great. And then this here, these are the 11 pieces of the smaller canvas that have been set aside and also fired to that silvery sheen. And what I've done is I've prepared the backs of it with a little etching fluid. So it's ready to, it's a good surface. It's got a bit of tooth and we can now add painting to it. So I have a few painting samples here as well. And big shout out to Elise in Philadelphia for her absolutely incredible instruction. If you ever have the chance to take a class with her, you absolutely should. And I think that she's teaching a class at the Baltimore Jewelry Center very soon. So consider signing up for that. And then moving here, I've got here are just some pieces, the secret canvas image and some other pieces of work. So people have a better sense of, the kind of things and aesthetic I've done in the past. And then the study of the tree of heaven, the ailanthus, the place where I basically ripped off a branch, which no one misses because it's invasive and everyone was cheering me on, but which was also infested with tree of heaven larvae, which all jumped on me while I was coming back from there, and that was not fun. So then here are just a few images that you've already seen of the firing practices. And for those of you who care, I'm pretty sure I wrote the formula out there if you want to play with the firing that I did. So this is the gallery log because as I redid the gallery, I would note when and what I did. I did not add what I was doing today, but I talked about, I just wanted people to notice that, or note, or if they checked it, they would know what was new and what wasn't, if they happened to come by and wanted to see how things were in process. Yeah, so this here is the tin of, I haven't yet opened it yet, and I think maybe we should. Maybe we'll do that now. So this is the second tin of the tree of heaven, and I need to turn it into this really funny little like lunch bag that I carried, like little haversack. I don't know why I put the twig on it, but it looked very whimsical and I loved that. So I'm just gonna do that. But Andrea here and I had a lot of fun in the morning. Was it just yesterday?
It was 2 days.
It was 2 days ago. I lose track of time. 2 days ago, and we made. Here we go, and we made charcoal in our fire pit. So this one was probably it was a bit greedy of me. It's the biggest tin I've ever put into a fire, and usually I work in like Altoids. It did. It's perfect. I know. Yeah. So Andrea here is pardon? So you basically just pack a tin and you punch holes in the tin. soak in off gas and release whatnot. But then you pack it full of as full as you can of whatever you want to turn into charcoal, and then you put it into the coals of a fire, make sure it's heated, and then you watch it. After a little while, the tin gets hot enough that things will start coming out, and then gas or smoke. And then when there's no more smoke, then you can probably let the coals die down. Or if you're impatient, you can just fish them out like we did. You don't want to know what's going on there. When I was in Italy, I just let the hearth burn down because we had one there, and then I just kind of would close the glass, and it was the heating method. So I just made charcoal all the time. I was loving burning things there. It was great. And then after, you do not open it until it's cool to the touch. If it is hot, well, not just because you burn your hands. If you do, then open, yeah, exactly. It'll combust, and what you're trying to do is control the combustion. So it creates really good pigment. I think traditional charcoals are made from willow, hazel, and grapevine. And so I have a whole bunch of grapevine from Italy. I have been naughty and fugitive and found willows somewhere, which I'm not going to say anything about because people are listening. And then the ailanthus was just taken directly from. Actually just on the walk over the bridge. I just happened to look over and like, that's what I want. So it took me a little while to figure out how to climb her down by the water there. So
do the different charcoals work differently? Or?
I hear that willow produces a bluer charcoal, a bluer pigment, that hazel produces a browner one, and that grapevines are kind of black, fairly neutral. I hear. I noticed that this one, when I did a print of the olive, I have some olive pit charcoal I made as well in Italy, and I've been saving that one for the next image I do. So, but that one did seem to come out a little browner, but I'm not sure if that was user error because I used an old coffee running term. Pardon?
What do you mix it with?
Magnesium carbonate, I think is what it's called. And then burnt plate oil, so linseed oil that's been heated to thicken. And it's just practice. If you do want to do this, you should take an intaglio class because then and work with inks, a few different kinds of inks because you'll decide what you like the consistency for it to become. It's the same with watercolor or any other pigment processing. I figured it out by the time I did that. That's a fairly clean image. That one is a little smeary, and I don't think I would make the same mistakes. But I kind of liked the effect in for the solastalgia kind of aspect of it. Yeah.
We have a couple of questions.
Oh yeah.
Would you tell Jay to join us? Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. So you had Wendy Davy, who's in the chat, which by the way, you have like 14 people, which is great. And you probably saw that. But she said she might have missed it, and this was a little bit earlier, but are you incorporating the enamel with gesso?
That's what I want to do. So this here is the, I don't have that specific sample, but I made a couple of bowls that just to test because I wanted to experiment with enameling a 3D-dimensional object. And one of them kind of got a bit more overfired and kind of quite electric blue, but the edges became quite raw. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool, but wouldn't it be fun to kind of like lean into that burnt looking aspect of it? So I did want to see if I could create a grit, clean the edges, and then apply gesso to it, see if it sticks or if it kind of, what do you call it? Cakes off, crumbles off, chips off. And if so, I do want to add the gesso and the charcoal to the gesso, and then see if that can kind of complete an object.
That's cool. Simone Littlevale says, fantastic presentation, and I love the thoughtfulness behind the process and choice of subjects. Do you plan to continue in this vein exploring the concept of invasive species and displacement?
Oh, very much. Thank you, Simone. Let's keep throwing the best questions. So I was already thinking about the looper moth and hemlock, but that's not really necessarily invasive. There's, of course, the Japanese pine beetle and the pine, which completely decimated the BC forestry industry. I think the interesting thing about the tree of heaven specifically and the lanternflies, that both are invasive. So that was really interesting, but definitely having, you know, like I thought making a little, like the little bezel that's got little like ailanthus leaves shaped around it to make a brooch and wear it over, being like, these are the only invasives that you shouldn't stop, you know, something like that, you know. So, and then that could be a whole series of, I don't know, the like deer and whatever, like all the wildflower, like literally
everything.
all the wildflowers, a number of other lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. And I would probably lean on Simone because she knows lots about native flora and species.
All right, good question. And now you've got some work cut out for you. We like it though. So how we do things. Wendy wanted to know, does it discolor the gesso in the enamel?
The gesso wouldn't be, I think the gesso would go on top of it. So it's more of a topical thing rather than a truly combined process. I'm pretty sure gesso would like atomize the enamel. I think I got a little bit of stone grit in my cloisonné here and it completely toasted the surface. It's not, I couldn't get rid of it. Yeah. So I wouldn't advise combining those two things together based on my limited knowledge.
Caitlin is very curious about what your music training was in. Is your primary instrument the flute?
Primary instrument is the flute. Like many other people of my background, I also learned piano from a young age and hated it. I regret not keeping up with it, but yes. And I took a lot of, it was in classical flute. And
then you've got a couple of lovely comments. George Benson says, I love the installation, so well put together. And later he came back to say, the theme of finding beauty amidst the tension of invasion and resettlement is really fascinating. I think that's a rich vein to me, and I would very much agree. Oh, Caitlin says she's a flautist. I didn't know that, Caitlin. Caitlin, do you know that I was too? I was very bad at it. And then Ingrid Valou, who I see is your father-in-law, says, hey, Docha, very nice to see you. It's been a while. And then Molly says, beautiful work. Caitlin says, great presentation. And oh my God, that's probably about my bad flute comment. But this has been terrific. I mean, I think there's just so much to see here. I hope that lots of people will come out and see this work. We'll have it up for a couple of weeks. Obviously, I know most people on the Zoom are too far away to see it, but you get Ingrid back to where you are soon. So I'm sure she'll show you at some point. And I know that she has some big hopes and dreams to maybe find a place to show this work in the future. Yeah. So I'm going to put that out into the ether and hope that happens for you.
And I did want to say that I actually made so many other things while I was here. I was able to take a really amazing forming class with the Baltimore Jewelry Center. That training doesn't exist in Vancouver. So I could only do the first 4 of 8 weeks because I'm leaving in a couple of days. But it was just so phenomenal to get to do some of these explorations, because even shaping these without distorting the image, it was a really good framework to kind of test out in the class, because usually if you're going to form anything, it just kind of like messes with the technical term.
Yes, is that for sure. Yeah.
So that was really great.
Yeah, you made so much, and this is terrific. Thank you for just really diving in and
thanks for having me, Jane.
Showing up.
It's meant everything
in so many ways.
So if Jane is still on Zoom, then huge thank you for letting me
She is. She's beautiful working. We're proud to know you.
She let me come here. She let me off for 4 weeks to do this, and it is so good. And I can't wait to see you Monday. So
yeah, I mean, you got a good employee there, Jane.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So Ingrid, I was wondering if you knew that residencies like yours here at the BJC are made possible entirely by donations.
Oh my God.
And if people want to contribute to residencies here at the BJC, they can do that at baltimoreJewelryCenter.org/donate. It's baltimoreJewelryCenter.org/donate.
I believe it was Baltimore Jewelry Center, and it's the American spelling. So JEWELYCENTER.org.
And it dropped it.
Right?
Dropped it in the chat so you can click. Oh, George says without that correction, they've given money to some faker out there. Centre. Actually, the name of the theater that we're in is Center, spelled that way. Don't look it up. Okay, thank you so much. It was wonderful. Thank you all for being here and everyone for being here on Zoom. And I just want to make one more plug for the, for lack of a better word, because it's been a long day for me, atypical residency candidates, like something we really love to see. People who like maybe have not been working in metal for a long time or ever. We love all kinds of applications, and it's really special to be able to give an opportunity to somebody who's just like, this is all I got, I want to do it. So
Highly recommend.
yeah. All right, thank y'all, and go have a good evening. Bye.